So hi guys, I am sitting here with Timmy today. Timmy is a financial educator and financial content creator. Hi Timmy, how are you?
I'm good, Rama.
Amazing. So I met Timmy at the UK Black Business Show, actually, where you won actually on that day. You were part of the top 25 entrepreneurs. Tell me a bit more about this, actually.
Yeah, no, so that was really interesting because I've known Raphael for a few years. I interviewed him on a podcast where I was the host and he was the guest, and we've stayed in touch since then. And yeah, it was like really nice of him to include me in that list. There were some names on there which I'm really inspired by and I've really looked up to. So that was an awesome achievement this year.
Amazing. So we'll definitely come back to that later. So you were featured on BBC News, ITV News, Financial Times, and Sky News. That is absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
So you usually talk about finance and debt, right?
Yeah, so I talk about, managing your money, getting out of debt, building your wealth, making more money, just financial education generally, so people can make more informed choices.
Nice. So how did you get to that?
Um,
What is your inspiration wanting to educate other people about finance?
yeah, I think there's two answers to that question. I think firstly, my first job out of uni was in financial PR. So I have 10 years of experience working as a researcher for financial brands. And my job after that was in marketing. So that's when I learned about what influencer marketing was and that people could actually make content online and sell products and stuff. But if I look back to my upbringing, um, I have lots of good memories. I grew up in South London, in Clapham. I'm the eldest of three boys. And we had everything but money, I would say. Like, I didn't realize it at the time, but you kind of look back at your upbringing and, the holidays that you went on and like the kind of place that you live in. And I think from a young age, I've just always been really interested in like why some people have money and when some people don't and how you can increase the amount of money that you make, basically.
Yeah, I mean, that's something I can definitely relate to. We didn't grow up with so much money, and I have seven sisters and two brothers.
What?
Yeah, I know. Wow.
Wow. That's a big
Yes,
family.
exactly. But we've always had each other's backs, and my parents made sure that we had everything growing up. So
Where are you?
I'm right in the middle.
All right.
So actually, not so right in the middle, actually. Okay, third from the top.
Okay.
So I'm kind of like in the middle. But yeah, I mean, I can relate, it's been amazing though, because you see your parents working hard and trying to make sure you don't ask for anything outside of the family. You always can go to them and ask them for something. But I think it's so important to know about finance because a lot of people don't have education about it, and this is where I guess you come in to educate them. So for how many years have you been doing this?
4. My business actually turned 4 last week.
Oh, happy anniversary.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's amazing. And what would you say is your greatest achievement?
It's really difficult to single it down to just one achievement, but I think I've got myself to a place in my life where I'm doing something that I'm good at, that helps other people, that I like doing, that I get paid to do. That's actually a Japanese concept called ikigai. Like if you can do those 4 things, then I think you're doing pretty well in life. So I kind of feel like I'm in a really fortunate position where I get to do stuff that I enjoy doing, but also get paid to do it, and it makes the world a better place, hopefully. So
Nice. So, what is the usual question people ask you when they come to you and they need financial advice?
people are largely interested in wealth building. I think it's normally questions around how to invest, particularly people that are investing for the first time, pensions, and like increasing income too. So anything around how to make more money, how to increase your wealth, those tend to be the questions. And I think it's because people want to be financially better off. They want to be prosperous, not just for themselves, but for the next generation too.
Amazing. So, you've acquired a lot of knowledge over the years. How did you do so? And which platforms? And, well, how did you educate yourself?
So I had a really big personal development push in 2016, 2017. I read something like 37 books.
Wow.
And they were all on the topic of money. Well, most of them were on the topic of money. And I did a lot of listening to podcasts and watching YouTube and stuff. And I'm a big believer in reading. If you really want to get to the core of a topic, you need to read the best books on that subject. And I know that not everyone has the time to read or may not enjoy that as a way of learning. But I think a nice happy medium is audiobooks. Like if you can get an Audible or Spotify subscription and listen to audiobooks, that's where you're going to get the real detail. And a book that really changed stuff for me was Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Oh,
Yeah,
so that was the number one book.
That was a gateway book that opened the door to everything else. Yeah.
Oh, okay. And what's your second and third favorite books?
Thinking back to the time, I read Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Work Week.
Mm-hmm.
That was a cool book. That was more like a business book. And only because it's coming to my mind now, but one of the first books I read on how to invest in the stock market was called The Zulu Principle by Jim Slater. And that was a really interesting book because it was like by a British person. A lot of the books back then were by Americans.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would you say that you've learned how to be more, financially independent because you went through certain situations where it was tough for you?
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, like my childhood, I wouldn't describe it as tough. It's just that you look back and you're like, oh wow, like my parents did this and that to make ends meet, or we didn't necessarily live in the biggest house, we didn't necessarily go on holiday every single year and stuff, but you only remember that looking back. At the time, you're just being a kid, like me and my brother just below me. I don't think we had any complaints really. We have nothing but positive memories from that period of time. But yeah, I used to keep a diary when I was a child, and I would put in my pocket money, and then I would put, like, I've bought some sweets, so £10 minus 30p. Like I still have it.
That's amazing. I feel like when I see you, I see that person that's very structured and organized. I really liked that when I was a child. I was a very hyperactive person, and then always getting in trouble at school, and then just didn't know anything about finance, didn't really have the best grades. But I think at a certain age, when I started to realize that, then I did like a 360. And then I said, okay, I need to actually focus because this world needs me. And I need to do something great, and I need to learn about finance, and I need to let people know that those things are very important to know. And this is why we have you on the podcast today as well. I thought it would be very interesting for people to find out a bit more about it.
How financially confident would you say you feel?
On a scale of 10?
Yeah, 1 to 10. 10 being super confident and 1 being not confident at all.
I would say I am a 6, a 5.
Okay.
I'm going to say a 4.
Okay. All right.
Okay, fine. Yes, around between a 5 and a 6. Because I'm guessing there is so many things that I don't know about finance at the moment, and I wouldn't be able to place myself too high because it's knowledge. When you don't even know what's out there, how can you rate yourself, in that subject? But I'm willing to learn. I think it's one of the most important thing. And then my next question to you was going to be, how do you build financial wealth? I'm guessing before building that financial wealth, you need to have some knowledge about the topic, right?
Yeah, so we just covered it. Like read books, and rather than list off a whole bunch of recommendations, just go to Amazon and put in personal finance. Put in investing and buy the top 10 books and read them. And if you read a book and it's not for you, then put the book down and get the next one. I think education is the first thing. I think social media is also really useful. There are loads of great financial creators on social media sharing stuff about money. And then once you've done the education piece, I think it's about, so I think there's 3 levels to it, right? I think it's like manage or reduce your debt, like high interest consumer debt. If you have it, is really, really difficult to build wealth whilst having debt at the same time. Managing your money well and saving, and then investing.
Yeah.
I think that's a 3-step process.
How do you save? nowadays? Because like we were talking about it earlier, inflation and all of that stuff. Some people barely meet ends, at the end of the day, at the end of the month, they've paid their rent, they've paid the transport, and then they have a bit left to have a social life. How do you start from that? Is there a way to maybe put some money aside very slowly and building from there?
Yeah, look, I don't, the cost of living's been rising a lot. I don't want to trivialize that. It is more difficult than ever to save, but I do think that it's about starting small. I say to people, even if you can save £1 this month, and then £5 the next, and then £10 the next, and then 10% of your income the month after that, start small, because there are many, many people in this country who don't even have any money in savings at all. So to even have a ridiculously small sum saved is better than nothing. So start small and build. You can do things like review your bills, and we all have automatic payments coming out, and we won't necessarily be using all of them. So you can look for ways to kind of cut back on the amounts of money that you're spending on. But then after that, it is just about earning more money.
Yeah.
I don't believe in just cutting and cutting and cutting. It gets to a point where you have to earn more, either through getting a pay rise at your job. There's like 30 million paid employees in this country, or if you're self-employed or a business owner, making more money in your business.
Okay. And how do we close the ethnicity wealth gap?
Yeah, that's a really, really big question. So in 2020, the Runnymede Trust did a study where they found that for every £1 a white British person has, a black Caribbean person has 20p, and a black African person has £1, 10p, sorry, relative. And one of the biggest stores of wealth in this country is the pension. So it's the money that you're putting away over the course of your career, which you then draw upon when you come to retire. So if you can familiarize yourself with your pension, be aware of how much you're paying in, be aware of how much your company is paying in, your employer match, and take a more active interest in that, that over the course of a generation is going to help with the wealth gap, because most of this country's wealth is in pensions. Property ownership is also really important too. Like we've seen a huge rise in the value of property over the last few decades, and if you weren't on the property ladder, then you missed out on that. So the general theme is like investing and owning stuff. You become wealthy by having an ownership stake in something, and that thing increasing in value over time.
So would you say people would pay more now that the value of things has increased? And is it a good time for people to invest?
It's always a good time for people to invest in my point of view, as long as you treat it as a long-term exercise. If you're investing and you're like, oh, I'm only going to do it for a few weeks, then that's not long enough for you to get things like growth and capital appreciation. But if you can invest for the long term, again, starting small. If we're talking about the stock market, for example, there are so many apps that let you start with like £1. If you do a monthly plan, £25 a month, start small and build, then yeah, over 10, 20, 30 years, you're going to increase your wealth for sure.
Okay, and talk to me about emergency savings and why they're important.
Yeah, sure. So emergency savings is money that you put aside so that if you lose your primary source of income, or if you have an emergency, like if your car was to break down, if your fridge was to stop working or something, you have enough money to pay for that without having to rely on the credit card or a loan. And the general advice is that you have 3 to 6 months worth of living expenses tucked away in emergency funds. I completely acknowledge that that's a lot of money to have saved, particularly during a cost of living crisis. So I just say, like, if you can have a lump sum, £250, £500, a grand, in an easy access savings account somewhere, that's going to put you in a really good position. And the way that I describe an emergency fund is it's like having an overdraft, but it's an overdraft that you've funded yourself.
It's a good way of
So
putting that.
you put yourself through the situation rather than relying on the bank.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for answering my questions. Now I'm going to ask you some relaxed and fun questions.
Sure.
I do like to end on this note. How would you want people to remember you in 80 years?
Wow, that's I've never actually thought of that before. Can I give you my honest answer to that?
Absolutely.
I hope people don't remember me in 80 years' time. I hope people remember the stuff I've built and the things I've created, but I don't really mind if people remember me or not, because I think that if you create something that is really important or really changes society, people are way more likely to remember that thing than to remember the person who created it. If you take, for example, like the phone you're using, yeah? We have no idea who invented the touchscreen.
Yeah, it's
despite
true.
the fact that we use it all the time.
But it's such a massive impact.
Yeah, we have no idea who,
right now.
who invented like the key or whatever, the zip. But these things have like fundamentally shaped society.
Yeah.
So I hope I'm remembered for what I've done. But if people remember me or not, fine.
Okay, and how would people describe you in 3 words?
I'm thinking of those close to me. I think they'll probably say I'm quite serious. I think they would say that I'm analytical. And I hope they would say that I'm funny. But I don't know if they would say that.
I think you're hilarious. And I am hilarious as well. No, I'm joking. Sorry, I just made myself laugh.
No, that's good. Look, you have an audience of one.
And my last question to you is, what would you call this current stage of your life?
So yeah, I'm 33 now, and this is the best decade I've ever had. This is the most money I've ever made. This is the most I've ever enjoyed my work. This is the most confident I've ever felt. So I'm just having a good time. And I think that if you learn the lessons from your 20s, then your 30s are actually really good, because your 20s is kind of like the first decade when you've been an adult. So you'll probably do a bunch of stuff well, but make a bunch of mistakes. But I feel like now I am taking everything that I learned from being in my 20s and applying it to my 30s, and it's going well. So if I could give it a name, I would just say it's the come up.
Oh, I like that. I love that. So you are happy?
I'm largely happy, yeah. I'm learning to be present, because I'm a really like goals-driven person. So I'll do something like when I went on ITV News, I had to be very careful to be present and not go, fine, I've done this, what's the next thing? So I'm learning to be happy in the moment and not looking to the next thing and the next thing, because I have a tendency to do that.
Yeah, I think it's so easy to get lost in the source and then just keep looking for the next thing, next purpose. But I think enjoying what's happening at the moment is very important as well.
I'm trying to be present today. I'm trying to enjoy it.
You feel like you're here.
Yeah.
And I love that. But thank you, Timmy, for coming on the podcast. You are the first guest, so that's amazing.
Thank you for having me.
But thank you so much.